One of the most common objections I encounter from Muslim apologists and secular skeptics alike is this: the Bible has been corrupted. It was changed over centuries by men with agendas. You can trust what it says today because it isn't what was originally written, and I want to take that seriously. Because if it's true, everything built on Scripture collapses. But here's what I've found. When you actually follow the evidence, not assumption, not tradition, but the manuscript evidence, the corruption claim doesn't just weaken, it collapses under its own logic. Let's walk through it carefully. Part 1. What would corruption actually require? First, let's define the claim clearly. For the Bible to have been corrupted, meaning deliberately changed to say something different from the original, you would need several things to be true simultaneously. You would need someone with the authority to gather every manuscript across every continent, North Africa, Europe, Asia Minor, Syria, and Rome, and replace them all with altered versions. You would need that person to do it secretly without a single church father, scholar, or scribe noticing and objecting. You would need all the early translations, Latin, Syriac, Coptic, Armenian, and Ethiopic, to be changed simultaneously. And you would need to do all of this before the printing press existed, when manuscripts were hand-copied across thousands of locations by thousands of different scribes. Historically, that is not a theory. That is logistically impossible. No serious textual scholar, Christian, Muslim, or secular, argues that the Bible was deliberately and systematically replaced. That position exists in popular debate, not in academic scholarship. The manuscript evidence. Here is what the actual evidence shows. We have today over 800 Greek manuscripts of the New Testament alone. That number doesn't include Latin, Syriac, Coptic, or other language manuscripts. Push the total past 24,000. No other ancient document comes close. Caesar's Gallic Wars, around 250 manuscripts. The earliest copy dates over 900 years after the original. Plato's works, around 210 manuscripts. Homer's Iliad is the most attested ancient secular work with around 1,900 manuscripts. Nobody questions whether we have Caesar's actual words. Nobody questions whether we have Plato. Yet the New Testament has more manuscript evidence than all other ancient documents combined, and it's the one people call corrupted. The earliest New Testament fragments date to within decades of the original writings. The gap between the original and earliest copy is smaller for the New Testament than for any other document from the ancient world. If the Bible is corrupted, then we know nothing about ancient history, because every other ancient text has far weaker manuscript support. Part 3. The Dead Sea Scrolls. For the Old Testament, the Dead Sea Scrolls settled this question definitively. Before 1947, the oldest Hebrew manuscripts of the Old Testament dated to around 900 AD. Skeptics argued that centuries of copying must have introduced changes. Then, in 1947, a Bedouin shepherd discovered scrolls in caves near the Dead Sea. What they found changed everything. Complete and partial manuscripts of the Old Testament dating to roughly 100 BC. Over 1,000 years older than what scholars previously had. When they compared those ancient scrolls to the manuscripts they already had, the texts were virtually identical. Over 1,000 years of copying, across multiple generations of scribes, and the text held. The Isaiah scroll found at Qumran is 95% word-for-word identical to the Isaiah text we use today. The remaining 5% are minor spelling variations and copyist notes, nothing that affects meaning or doctrine. That is not corruption. That is extraordinary preservation. Part 4. The Quran's own testimony. This point is specifically for those coming from an Islamic framework, and I want to handle it respectfully, but honestly. The Quran itself speaks about the Bible. Surah 547 says, "Let the people of the gospel judge by what Allah has revealed therein." Surah 10:94 tells the Prophet Muhammad himself, if he is in doubt about what was revealed to him, to ask those who have been reading the scripture before you. Surah 3:3 says, Allah revealed the Torah and the Gospel as guidance. Now here is the logical problem. If the Bible was already corrupted before the Quran was written, why does the Quran tell people to consult it? Why does it affirm it as guidance? Why does it tell Muhammad himself to go to the people of the book if he has doubts? The corruption claim creates a contradiction within the Quran itself. The historical Muslim scholarly position was not that the text was corrupted, but that it was misinterpreted. The claim of textual corruption is a later development, introduced precisely because the biblical text and the Quranic text say different things about Jesus. But you cannot resolve a theological difference by claiming the other side's text was corrupted, especially when your own text affirms that text as reliable. Part 5, variants are not corruptions. Now, there are genuine textual variants in the biblical manuscripts. Scholars are completely transparent about this. And people sometimes point to these variants as proof of corruption. But let's be precise about what a variant actually is. The overwhelming majority of variants are spelling differences, word order differences, and minor scribal slips, the kind that happen when human beings copy text by hand across centuries. Scholars estimate that variants affecting the meaning of the text are a fraction of the total, and not a single core Christian doctrine rests on a disputed passage. The deity of Christ, the resurrection, salvation by grace, the nature of God. None of these hang on a textual variant. Transparency about variants is not evidence of corruption. It is evidence of rigorous scholarship. The fact that we can identify variants means we have enough manuscripts to compare. You can only spot a copying error when you have multiple copies to cross-reference. The variants actually prove the manuscript tradition is healthy, not compromised. So has the Bible been corrupted? The manuscript evidence says no. Over 24,000 copies across multiple languages and continents agree on all the essentials. The Dead Sea Scrolls say no. 1,000 years of copying produced a text virtually identical to what we already had. The logical requirements of corruption say no. No person, no council, no empire had the reach to replace thousands of manuscripts across the known world silently. And the Quran's own testimony says no, affirming the Torah and Gospel as revelation from God. The corruption claim feels powerful when it's stated confidently, but it doesn't survive contact with the actual evidence. The Bible you hold today is not a corrupted document. It is one of the most carefully preserved, most thoroughly attested texts in all of human history. And what it says about Jesus, it has always said. That is worth sitting with.